Have you ever watched someone else get a standing ovation for the blood you spilled in silence? I have. I sat in the middle of the room while they clapped for someone else, someone who never showed up at 2 a.m., never skipped a single holiday, never bled through 14-hour days to keep that project alive. And right there, under the sound of their applause, it hit me. This wasn't a mistake. This was a quiet execution. They applauded him like he'd built the project with his bare hands, standing in front of the entire company, 4 floors of developers, analysts, and team leads, packed shoulder to shoulder. Our CEO, Ben Caldwell, smiled wide, like he was proud of what we had accomplished. Except when it came time to give credit, he didn't say we. He said he. This kind of turnaround doesn't happen without leadership. Ben declared Michael took a sinking ship and turned it into a success story. Let's all take a moment to thank him. I didn't flinch. I didn't even blink. I just stared straight ahead, heart thudding behind a calm expression I'd perfected over the last 4 years. Michael. Seriously. Michael had been in Italy for half the quarter. He was CC'd on most of the chaos, but never stepped in. Never showed up for a single 2 a.m. emergency call. And yet, here he was, standing to a standing ovation. I stayed seated. I'm Amanda, project manager at Talvix Technologies, mid-size, but fast-growing, built on pressure and speed. For years, I'd been the quiet one who delivered the impossible without asking for much. I didn't play politics. I didn't brag, I just worked hard. Always 3 weeks ago, our largest client, Virexa Systems, was ready to walk. Their $8.3 million deal was on life support, and the team that was supposed to fix it, half were gone. The other half were in over their heads. So I stepped in. Not because I was asked, but because I couldn't watch it fall apart. I worked 80-hour weeks, missed holidays, slept on the office couch twice. I coded. I led, I put out fires. I sent updates at 3:47 in the morning. I saved that project. And now I was a ghost. The applause finally died down. People looked around, uncertain whether to sit or keep clapping. I remained still. On the inside, though, something cracked. I opened my laptop slowly and looked at the draft email I'd written 2 nights ago. Subject: request for salary adjustment. Still unsent. I'd wanted to wait. Be patient. Show respect. But in this moment, watching Michael beam like he'd earned any of it, I realized something I'd been too careful to admit. This wasn't forgetfulness. This wasn't a mistake. This was intentional. They didn't forget me. They chose to erase me. People think burnout happens all at once, like you wake up one day and suddenly can't function. But that's not how it happened to me. For me, it was gradual, quiet, like someone slowly turning down the volume of my life until the only thing left was work. When the Virexa project started to spiral, no one said a word. The deadline slipped, the system logs flagged, errors no one understood, and the inbox filled with passive-aggressive questions from their tech team. I waited for someone to take charge. No one did. So I stepped in. At first, it was just late nights, then weekends. Then I brought a sleeping bag to the office, just in case, and before I knew it, I had gone 3 weeks without seeing my apartment in daylight. I missed my little sister's wedding. Didn't even have time to text her back. My eyes burned constantly. My headaches turned to migraines, and I started drinking black coffee just to stay upright. I stopped counting. The hours after 80 in a week felt normal. My clothes got looser, my voice got quieter, and still I kept going. Not because I was chasing glory, not because I expected praise, but because someone had to. The back-end engineer started forwarding everything to me. You explain it better. The UI guy began asking if I could join client calls. You're the only one who doesn't make them panic. One junior developer confessed he only stuck around because I made the chaos feel less terrifying. So I did it all. Documentation, debugging strategy, client management, emergency patches. I was the last one out of the building and the first one back in. But I never complained because deep down, I believed something foolish. That if I showed up when no one else would, if I carried the weight that wasn't mine, if I saved the company from itself, they'd see me, they'd thank me, they'd protect me. That belief kept me moving long after my body begged me to stop. It made every ache worth it, every skipped meal, every silent night. I cried in the server room because the logs weren't clearing, and the CEO wouldn't answer his phone. I told myself I was doing the right thing. I told myself it would pay off. But sitting in that conference room listening to the applause meant for someone else I felt it unravel, all the logic, all the faith, all the reasons I kept going. Gone! And in its place, a single thought whispered in the back of my mind. I thought saving them would save me. I was wrong. It took me 3 hours to write the email. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I kept rewriting it, softening the edges, trimming anything that might sound entitled. I read it out loud, I edited it again, I hesitated at salary adjustment, and almost changed it to review just to make it less confrontational. In the end, it was simple. Professional, unemotional subject request for salary adjustment. Hi, Ben. After leading the recovery of the Virexa project and supporting multiple critical deliverables across departments, I'd like to discuss aligning my compensation with my current responsibilities. I'm happy to schedule a time to talk this through. Best Amanda. I waited until 7:14 p.m. to hit send. No one would see it right away. I figured it would give them time to think. The reply came back at 9:03 p.m. Less than 2 hours later. No subject line, no greeting. Hi, Amanda. Appreciate the effort. However, given budget constraints and current company priorities, we are unable to accommodate your request at this time. Regards, Ben Caldwell. That was it. 12 words to summarize 3 weeks of 80-hour sprints. No mention of my leadership, no acknowledgement of my sacrifice, not even a placeholder meeting, just a flat rejection, cold, efficient corporate. I stared at the screen. It didn't hit all at once. Not like an explosion, more like a quiet implosion. A slow collapsing of something I didn't realize had been holding me together. I stood up from my desk and walked to the bathroom. Locked the stall door, sat down fully clothed, and pressed my forehead against the metal divider. And then I cried. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just tears that refused to stop. I cried because I believed. Because I had convinced myself that showing up, over-delivering, staying quiet, being loyal meant something. Because part of me still thought if I do everything right, they'll do right by me. And now I knew they wouldn't. Not because they forgot, but because they never planned to remember me in the first place. It was in that stall between the cold tiles and the fluorescent lights that I felt the final crack, and no one heard it but me. No one checked in. No one noticed I'd left my desk. And honestly, I preferred it that way. Because at that moment, for the first time in my entire career, I wasn't trying to be seen anymore. I was starting to plan. I wasn't angry. I was calculating. I didn't go back to my desk after the bathroom. I went home. No goodbye. No excuse. I left my laptop in sleep mode and walked out with nothing but my keys. The next morning, I returned earlier than usual. The office was still dim, the air thick with recycled silence, and that faint citrus cleaner scent that always reminded me of early deadlines and late regrets. I needed to see something. Our team shared drive had a presentation folder. Q2, Recovery, Internal Recap. It had been added overnight. I clicked in slide after slide of metrics graphs, success points, screenshots of client feedback, even snapshots of Slack conversations. Michael's name was mentioned on 5 different slides. Mine didn't show up once I hit Ctrl+F. Typed Amanda 0 results. At first, I thought maybe it was a draft. Then I opened the official weekly status report, then the internal timeline document, then the client-facing log, same result. I didn't feel anger. Not anymore. That was yesterday's wound. What I felt now was clarity, cold and useful. They weren't just ignoring me, they were erasing me. And that wasn't negligence. It was strategy. Around 9:12 a.m., I overheard it by accident. Two senior managers talking just outside the break room. Ben wants Michael to take over the PMO lead in Q4. Says it's time we had someone with client-facing confidence. Client-facing confidence. The same Michael who stuttered through every call and disappeared for 2 weeks during the Virexa sprint. I didn't move. I just stood there, holding my coffee eyes fixed on the water cooler, like I was deep in thought. When in truth, I was wide awake for the first time in weeks. By lunchtime, I had already started my own backup archive, not just emails and status reports. I pulled Slack logs, screenshots, time-stamped commit histories. Every note, outline, and correction I had contributed. Every late-night fix. Every direct message from the client thanking me. I tagged and dated each file, created a secure external drive. I didn't just want proof, I wanted a record. Not for revenge, not yet. This wasn't about retaliation. It was about protection, about truth. They could strip me from the decks. They could delete my name from the summary slides. But they couldn't delete the data I'd touched. They couldn't undo the impact I'd already imprinted into the foundation of that project. The irony was almost poetic. They had underestimated the one person who documented everything, so I let them keep going. Let them plan their promotion. Let them rewrite the narrative. Let them believe I was folding into silence, because I wasn't folding. I was watching. Preparing. And when the time came, when their version of the story crashed against the version I'd archived, I knew exactly how to expose it. No noise, no rage, just proof. Just silence sharpened into precision. If they wanted a silent war, I'd fight it by their rules. It started with a calendar invite. No subject line, just Virexa internal. Project debrief, roundtable. Amanda requested. Requested. I stared at the screen, rereading it 3 times. The invite wasn't from our team. It was sent directly by one of Virexa's directors. I clicked into the attendee list. Every senior name from their side was on it. Only 2 from ours. Ben Caldwell and me. I accepted without hesitation. By Thursday morning, the meeting room was ready. Glass walls, high ceilings, awkward energy. Virexa's team filed in virtually clean suits and calm faces. Ben sat at the head of the table, composed, polished, always rehearsed. I took a seat quietly near the edge. The small talk died fast. The moment the formalities ended, it came. "Before we begin," said Elena Virelli, Virexa's senior strategy officer, looking directly into the camera, "I have a quick question." Ben leaned forward. "Of course! Why wasn't Amanda included in your original leadership summary?" The room went still. She didn't say it aggressively. It wasn't loud or accusatory. It was worse. It was calm. Curious, but deliberate. Ben blinked. We categorized contributions collectively. The leadership summary focused on executive oversight." "That's odd," Elena replied. "Amanda was our primary point of contact for 3 weeks. She made every executive call. She rebuilt your back end. She caught the compliance error we almost missed in Phase 2. Every sentence hit like a stone skipping across still water, gentle, precise, but impossible to ignore." Ben glanced at me for half a second. His lips moved slightly, as if to speak, but no sound came. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. Elena continued unfazed. "Frankly, we were surprised not to see her included, especially since your team kept crediting Michael's silence." I watched Ben grip the pen in front of him. His knuckles whitened. That was the first time I saw it. Not charm, not confidence, not the smug CEO composure he wore like armor. But something else, fear. He looked at me again, and this time his eyes didn't say, "Don't speak." They said, "Don't move." And that's when I realized he wasn't worried I'd embarrass him. He was terrified I wouldn't save him again. Virexa pivoted the conversation, but the damage had been done. The air had shifted. The applause he once owned now echoed with someone else's name. Mine! For the first time, someone said my name and meant it. And for the first time, I saw his eyes not as superior, but uncertain. Not as powerful, but exposed. By the next morning, the emails started trickling in. Not from Talvex, from Virexa. One from Elena, marked high priority. One from their compliance head. One from their lead engineer with a subject line that simply read, "We want Amanda." They didn't even try to be subtle. They wanted me on every call, every sprint review, every roadmap session moving forward. They even added me to the direct Slack channel between both companies without looping in Michael or Ben. And just like that, the story began to shift. Internally, it caused a ripple Talvex couldn't contain. Department heads started asking why the client was bypassing protocol. A few bold ones suggested I be reassigned to lead the next 2 phases. Ben, of course, resisted. He called an executive recalibration meeting. He used words like optics alignment and team equity. But whispers spread. People had questions. And when people ask questions about silence, silence becomes its own answer. By the end of the week, a new name appeared in the meeting notes. Not mine, Ben's. He was no longer just running the show, he was being watched. The board of directors had added him to their private calendar rotation. I knew that tone audit mode. I didn't say anything, but I knew Ben had finally started to sweat. It was Friday morning when I got the call. His name lit up on my phone. Ben Caldwell, mobile. For a brief moment, I just stared at the screen. Then I answered Amanda. He said, his voice softer than I'd ever heard it. "Hope you're doing well." No greeting. No context. Just tone, that overly warm, overly careful tone of someone who realized the fire alarm wasn't just a drill. "I wanted to personally invite you to a strategy session this afternoon. Just a quick roundtable realignment stuff. Would love your insights on Ben." I cut in calmly. "I won't be attending." There was a pause on the other end, long enough to hear the silence behind him. Maybe he was alone in his office. Maybe he thought flattery would still work. "Well, I think it's important we show a united front for Virexa. They're very vocal about their preference to work with you." "I know they are." Another pause. This time tighter. Tenser. "Look, Amanda, I know things have been tense. I just think this is a good moment to reset, to move forward." And there it was. The shift, the apology that wasn't quite an apology, the offer that wasn't quite sincere, but the desperation that was real. I took a breath, slow and steady. "It's too late, Ben." Silence. Again. Only this time, it wasn't mine. It was his. And it wasn't calm. It was stunned. I hung up gently, no goodbye, no emotion, just precision. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need to yell. I just needed him to understand he no longer controlled the ending. And judging by the silence on the other end of the line, he did. The official termination notice came on a Tuesday. It wasn't dramatic. No phone call. No warning. Just a simple curt email sent to the executive team, CCing the board. Subject: project cancellation. Immediate. Due to ongoing concerns around personnel misalignment and loss of trust. Virexa is suspending all current and future collaboration with Talvex Technologies. Effective immediately. Elena Virelli, Senior Strategy Officer, 8 $3 million, gone in 2 sentences. No fanfare, just fact. By noon, the entire company felt it. Slack channels exploded with coded messages. Did you hear? Check your inbox, it's happening. Teams went eerily quiet. Department heads scrambled for explanations. One project manager said they had 5 open requisitions frozen within minutes. At 2:00 p.m., Ben called an emergency all hands. He looked pale, less like a CEO, more like a man trying to plug a leak in a dam with duct tape. Let me be clear. This is not the failure of any one person. It's a moment of organizational recalibration. Miscommunication happens. Expectations shift, but we will adapt. What followed was the most desperate performance I had ever seen. Ben didn't own the loss. He diffused it. He cited breakdowns in coordination. He mentioned overpromising by mid-level staff. He blamed disconnects in deliverable scope. And by the end of the meeting, 2 mid-tier managers were gone. Fired publicly abruptly, a human sacrifice to buy time, but no one looked convinced, especially not the board. They didn't speak, they just watched, their silence louder than any applause I'd ever heard. After the meeting, I returned to my desk like nothing had happened. I didn't gloat, I didn't celebrate, but I didn't need to. Because the halls spoke for me now. I passed by the finance director on the 2nd floor. Dana Reynolds, 20 years in the company, rarely said more than 5 words at once. She brushed by me in the hallway, leaned in just slightly and whispered, "You know you just ended his career, right?" I didn't respond, not with words, just a nod because I knew. This wasn't just a canceled contract. This wasn't just a client walking. This was collapse not from fire, not from scandal, but from truth. Truth that had waited patiently. Truth that didn't shout. Truth that simply stood in the room and let the silence do the rest. And as I walked past the boardroom one last time, saw Ben sitting alone with his hands folded and no one beside him, I knew what I had done. I had taken the last thing he had, not his job, his control. And I knew I had just snapped the last staff of power he had left. I didn't tell anyone I was leaving. No dramatic speech. No cryptic Slack status. No farewell cupcakes in the break room. Just one email. Subject, resignation and supporting materials. Amanda Lee. It was short, gracious, precise. I thanked the company for the opportunity, I acknowledged the team's efforts, and I attached a zip drive with everything they never asked for, but always needed. Every decision log, every bug fix, every documented system patch, screenshots, timestamps, project audits. A digital breadcrumb trail that showed exactly who saved what and when. I sent it to 2 addresses, one to the board, one to Virexa. Then I closed my laptop and exhaled. For the first time in weeks, I felt my lungs expand fully. The tension in my jaw released. The hum in my skull, the one that had been there since this entire ordeal began, finally quieted. Not because I won, but because I was done playing a game I never agreed to. I packed up slowly. Only what mattered. A notebook, a plant, a mug. Someone gave me during my 2nd year that said, "Fixer of all things." I tucked it into my bag and zipped it shut, like sealing a chapter. No one said anything as I walked out, but I felt them watching. Not with the pity people give someone who's lost, with something else. Recognition maybe, regret possibly, or fear. Because in the end, I didn't have to slam doors or raise my voice. My silence had spoken louder than any outburst ever could. That afternoon passed without noise. No reply from the board. Not even a bounce back, but 2 days later a memo leaked. Ben Caldwell was being placed on administrative reassignment pending review. That was their way of saying, "You've lost control." Sit down. I didn't celebrate. By then, I was already elsewhere, sitting at a window table in a quiet cafe downtown, sipping coffee that didn't taste like panic. I didn't check Slack. Didn't scan LinkedIn, didn't replay what-ifs. Because I wasn't angry anymore. Anger is loud, it burns fast, but freedom. Freedom is quiet, it lingers, it breathes. And that's what I had now. Not vengeance, not fame, just the knowledge that I stayed true to myself even when no one else did, that I left a record no one could delete, that I said nothing, and they heard me anyway. They once erased my name to make space for someone easier to praise. Now, they don't dare speak it, not because they've forgotten, but because they're afraid they were wrong. The offer letter came 3 days after I walked away. No recruiter, no formal process, no hoops, just a single direct email from Elena Varelli, subject, strategic partner, opportunity, Amanda Lee. The body was simple, no fluff, no HR filler, just clarity. We've reviewed your work, not just in deliverables, but in character. What you did under pressure speaks louder than any resume. We'd like to offer you a position as strategic project consultant with full autonomy on timelines and team composition. Compensation: double your previous salary. Terms flexible. Trust already earned. At the bottom, one line stood out. Here your name means something. I read it 3 times, not because I didn't believe it, but because something in me needed to absorb it slowly, like letting sunlight reach a room that had been closed off too long. No second guessing. No need to prove, just acknowledgement, just respect. I didn't cry, I didn't cheer. I smiled, small, steady, and for the first time in weeks, real. I closed my laptop and stood up, walking toward the window of my apartment. Outside the city moved on like it always had. Cars rushing people, weaving through sidewalks, unaware that somewhere in that current, a quiet victory had just unfolded. I made tea, not because I was tired, but because I could. There were no meetings to brace for, no emails laced with tension, no weight hanging over my chest like it had for months. I sat down near the window, laptop still closed, tea in hand. For once, I wasn't reaching for the keyboard to defend myself. I wasn't calculating my next move. I was just here, free. The next morning, I opened my laptop, not from dread, but from curiosity. A single message sat in my inbox from a former Talvex developer, someone I hadn't heard from in months. Just wanted to say, thank you. You gave us the courage to finally quit, too. I read it twice, then replied with 2 words. I see you. Because I did. I saw everyone who stayed silent like I had once, everyone who thought dignity came from endurance, everyone who didn't yet know that sometimes walking away isn't giving up, it's claiming what's already yours. That afternoon, I signed the offer. Not because I needed the job, but because it honored the part of me that Talvex had tried to erase. Sometimes you don't have to stay to win, you just have to leave at the right time. Ben Caldwell was replaced quietly. No farewell speech. No LinkedIn announcement. Just a 1-line internal memo. Effective immediately. Ben Caldwell will no longer serve as CEO of Talvex Technologies. There was no ceremony, no thank you, just absence. A week later, Talvex rolled out new internal policy updates. All project contributions would now require detailed attribution. Every team member listed. Every hour logged with names. No more silent labor, no more invisible effort. The irony didn't escape me. I didn't post about it, didn't brag. I didn't even mention Talvex by name. But when I was invited to speak on a podcast called The Cost of Silence, I said yes. Just once, I didn't name names. I didn't shame. I just told the truth. I spoke about the danger of mistaking loyalty for weakness, about the power of documentation, about what it means to stay quiet for too long, and what happens when you finally stop. The episode aired on a Thursday. By Friday, my inbox was full. Some messages were from strangers who said my story gave them the courage to speak up. Others were from people still stuck inside rooms like the ones I'd walked out of. But one message stood out. It was from a new developer at Talvex. I found your log file. Thank you. It saved us. You saved us. I sat with that for a while because I hadn't meant to save anyone. I just refused to disappear. But maybe that was enough. Maybe showing up refusing to be erased quietly, leaving a record. Maybe that is the legacy. Not noise, not revenge. Just proof that you were here. And you mattered. If you're someone who's been cut out, written off, or quietly erased, don't be afraid. Let your silence echo so loudly. The entire system is forced to listen.